Okay, so Ani, you're building a new site.
That's correct. My company is building a new site. We want to do the SEO part right
Yep,
from the beginning.
right.
We have, you know, all the usual standard SEO going right now. But having looked at a company I used to work for, I looked at a site I used to manage and they just replaced it. Well, it's not indexable, so I keep watching them like disappear from search results. It's kind of like, I don't know, and I know we're not going to do that, but I
Right.
want to, make sure that we're following, that I'm thinking that the things I'm not thinking of, we're going to do.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
obviously they did not think of all the things either. So I
Right.
know I'm going to do better than them.
Yes.
And our site will be indexable. We'll have all our, you know, alt text and meta descriptions and
Right. Right.
keyword research. We're good to go on that. I just maybe the things that I could forget are
Yeah.
what I want to make sure that I remember.
Great. I mean, this is the right way to ask it because so many times people think of SEO, they're like title tags and meta descriptions and putting words on the page. But if the site is not readable or crawlable or indexable, the best Pulitzer Prize winning SEO keyword optimized content can't do you a darn bit of good.
Oh, and they also forgot to bring over the like 10 years of blog posts.
Right. That's a
So,
huge common
yeah,
problem.
yeah.
Right?
So
I've
I
had
know
many
we won't do
clients
that either,
go,
but
"Oh, we don't like those. We're going to start over." I'm like, "You're going to lose a lot, even if they're not all relevant." So number one, um, this is where we remember what the kind of the five parts of any SEO campaign, right? One, analytics, right? Ain't no good to launch a website without analytics because you don't know if it does anything. So have a plan. If you can, move to tag managers, a good opportunity for that, right? Um, but have that plan in place. Also, don't put analytics on the site until it's launched, right? You don't want analytics on your dev site.
yeah, I think we're encountering some enthusiastic
Right, right.
interest right now.
Like that's literally step one. Well, no, step two. We'll get to step one in a second, but step two is confirming analytics on the site once it's launched. Step one is we'll get to second. Oh, so the analytics is always key. The start of everything. That's why we're really big on that here. Two is technical. Now, technical is everybody's got, their own little, thing that's technical. Sometimes people say, oh, technical, that means speed. Well, that's a dimension of technical, but it's really making sure Google can read your site. So if we use a system like WordPress, we got 95% of the technical stuff taken care of off the bat. And sometimes we have to fight developers who, or what I want to build it in a node framework because that's what I've been studying and it'd be cool. Well, okay, if you're going to do Node or Angular or React or any JavaScript framework, there's certain steps you got to take in addition. And that's why sites get de-indexed on launch, right? So use an established CMS like WordPress. There's a lot of politics going on with WordPress right now, but it's still a really good platform to build a site on. And most of the stuff be taken care of. But within the technical, you got to worry about stuff like 404 errors and redirects. So think about your Search Console page report and the error report where it's going to show you things like, hey, these are 404 pages. These are 500 errors. Think about those things and how you can mitigate that. So for instance, having a plan to make sure if any URL changes, that the redirects are in place. But it's not just from this version to the latest version. You want to make sure redirects are in place for the previous version and the version before that and the version like you got to have a plan so the redirects could go in. Now there's plugins that can do this on a WordPress site, but sometimes server side redirects are a little easier to manage. So, but have a plan in place for that, right? However, I will say that I've worked really hard in a lot of cases to not change a single URL on a site so I can avoid massive amount of redirects. So only under rare circumstances would I, and thankfully with a WordPress site, you're changing the theme, but you're not really changing the URLs. So unless there's a really good reason to change the URLs, don't. And that includes triple W or not, right? Whatever you're using, if you want to, if you want to keep what's going on your site, make sure all the URLs are exactly the same. Don't forget that like even like the final slash at the end of the URL matters. If there's one character difference, Google will de-index the page before it re-indexes it later, and that will see your dip in site traffic until you grow. So one of the things I set all my clients is there will be a drop when we launch the news. There's going to be a drop. But if we do everything right in a month or so, and it takes a month, maybe two, to recover. But that's as Google's re-going through the whole site and saying, well, okay, well, this page has changed. How does it now rank as opposed to with the other millions of websites out there on the same topic? It's going to re-index and sort up. So that during that time of re-index, you'll have the old site still in the search results while the new site's there. So things like redirect plans help mitigate that damage, right? And expedite the dip. So it's a shorter dip. But there's going to be a dip, and just set everybody's expectation. But think about the Search Console and the errors and figure out how you can mitigate those damages. Then we talk about content, right? And that's having a SEO blueprint, meaning a keyword topic for unique to each page that's not repeating the same keywords. So that way we know, okay, this page is on this topic, this page is on this topic, right? And having a plan and having all our title tags written and our meta descriptions written and our content written.
I
I,
think we're
sorry,
doing good. I think we're doing good with that. I've
good, good.
some of
And
that in the right
yeah,
area.
and then I'd even have a blog post, like what I like to do is have 5 blog posts queued up to launch on the week after the site launches. This does a couple things. Number one, the next day you launch your first new blog post, that gives Google a reason to come back to your site. And the next day after that, you launch another blog post, and that gives Google another reason to come back to your site. And then, so if you do 5 days or so blog posts, you're really giving Google an interest in your site because new stuff's producing. And that again can help mitigate this. Now, blogging is one of those things that we talked a lot about, and then getting into a rhythm of blogging is good, but use that opportunity. So that's the content part. Uh, yeah. Then once we do content, then we think about link building. And that's where I would start to either I would do two things. Number one, find an opportunity to build a link to your site that's new and never been built before. And there's all kinds of documentation and curious into what makes a credible link. Don't just send a press release out. Those don't count. Don't just post it on your Facebook page. I mean, post on your Facebook page, right? That's a great idea, but don't think that's a link. It's not a link that counts for Google. Think about how you can get promoted in your local industry. Think about how you can submit your website to a website design award. Like whatever, get an interview in the local newspaper or local small business journal, right? Get interviewed, get a link to your site that's fresh and new. But along with those links, and this is especially important if your URL changes, go back to your old links and make sure they are linking to the right place. That's tedious and a real pain in the butt. But if your URLs, if you've moved from triple W to not or vice versa, that's the time to do it. And as many of those as you can do, the better. But while you're reviewing those, go through and find new opportunities. Okay, so they wrote about you 5 years ago. Maybe they'd like an update. You submitted in this business directory, but you can contribute a blog post to that directory too. Now's the time to do that. So get those links into the fresh site, and all this mitigates the damage of the re-indexing. So there is on the Curious Ants site available to everybody the checklist, the website design best practices, which is what you give your designer developer to make sure that it's built right. The last update was 3 months ago. I really keep that up to date. So check it out, download it, make sure you read it, make sure everybody's involved reads it. Um, there's a lot of experience and a lot of tears behind that document of websites that went wrong. Every time I give a developer that document, they find some way to work around something I said, and they do it wrong, and I have to go back and fix it. So, but that's a great place to start. The second thing is the website launch checklist. This is what, whenever the site launches, you need all hands on deck, and you need a team of people reviewing the site, because once it's launched, the clock is ticking, and Google potentially could index an error. And we want to catch the errors before Google can index it. It's not going to index it that quick unless you're a really high traffic site. So you have typically some time to catch things and fix it before Google does. Otherwise, that dip just goes on for a long time. But I like to make sure everybody has the checklist, the launch checklist before launch, so everybody knows how we will be evaluating launch. And you'll see stuff in the checklist that'll be like, oh, that means there's something I got to do beforehand. There's some other tips in there, like every day set up a alert to tell you about the 404 errors, if you need to add some more redirects that you missed, things like that. That's all in the post-launch checklist. That's a really huge, again, a lot of tears behind that, because how many times I've launched sites and you're just like, OMG, we screwed up. And now we're panicking. A couple of times. I mean, I think the last website I helped launch was in December. Oh, thank goodness. Like, it took 15 minutes after launch, and we're like, hey, they did it all right. Everything's great. Most of the time, that's not how it works.
Yeah, yeah,
And the post-launch checklist is designed to, but review it before you launch,
yeah.
right? I also, and that brings me to the number one thing. When you launch the website, the first thing you check, number two is analytics. Number one is that God-forsaken checkbox in WordPress that says do not index this
Yeah.
site.
No, we've been having an issue, not with that, but with a similar thing where every time we go to launch, for some reason, our robots.txt is set to not index.
It might be because of the way you're copying from the dev server to the live server.
It didn't used to be that way,
Right.
whatever, but now it happens every time, and yeah,
That
everybody
brings up
thought
a
it was
good
that, but
point.
it wasn't that, it was
Yeah,
the robots.
that brings up a really good point. Dev servers are indexable by Google,
Yeah.
especially on WordPress sites, because there are things WordPress is doing that tell Google the site's here. So you can create a real duplicate content problem where Google goes, there's two copies of this site. So remember, there's one way to guarantee Google won't index your site. It's called a password. And if you password protect your website, Google cannot enter a password and index it. You can do it on the server side. I'll do a server side password and just enter it in, and I can monkey all I want on the site, but Google can't get it. And then when you go, check the robots.txt, make sure you didn't import a robot, and then uncheck that box. I've made so much money from website audits who forgot to uncheck that box. I have a
Yeah.
buddy who launched a website, and it wasn't for 3 months later they realized he forgot to uncheck that box.
Oh no, I mean it
It's bad. Google
was the
respects
first
that
thing
checkbox. Wow.
I it's the first thing I checked because
Mhm.
it's happened before.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
to me and intentionally in some cases. So that I do want to ask, we do have an enthusiastic intern who is adding SiteKit to the dev sites. Just wait. Okay. Yeah,
Ah,
I was like, we shouldn't do that, but
no.
I want to, if I say David says we shouldn't do that, that will
Right.
make it
There
better.
you go. Use it. So I think I told Trisha this, and I'll tell you, I am moving away from recommending SiteKit.
Okay. We
Mhm.
didn't use it. I would just add the code, but
The best case is you can manually, so there is a here, I have it actually here on my one of these. There's a plugin called the Fluent Snippets plugin.
Yeah.
That is a plugin that allows you to add code without monkeying with the theme. So it
our
has,
theme has spots for the header and body and
well,
footer
right.
text.
So
So
but remember there are two places you have to add tag manager,
Yeah, the head and body.
head and body, not just the head. So just make sure you're adding it per the directions in tag manager or analytics. I would recommend using tag manager, but
Yes.
do
Especially.
what you can. And that's why the Fluent Snippets plugin is a good solution, because then if the theme gets updated, the analytics doesn't get overwritten, which is a really common problem.
Yeah.
If you're not using a daughter theme, for instance. So just, or if the theme, like let's say your page builder has it's a thing, usually that works too, but double check that I make sure it's adding it in both places.
yeah,
Point is, oh, and also make sure you an overzealous intern didn't add it in all the places and you're firing 17-ish versions of
yeah,
code. It's a great way to increase your traffic.
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are some other little tips. And if they aren't in the guidelines and checklist, then tell me and I will update them. But go to Curious Ants and use the search bar to the website design guidelines and website launch checklist, and you can download those to help you with the launch. And it tells you what you're going to be looking at, what success looks like. Uh, Tools that help are Screaming Frog. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Screaming Frog. Crawling your site with Screaming Frog is a great way and a scalable way to check every page of your site for weirdness. Um, that's one of the things I think on the checklist, the post-launch checklist, but I know not everybody has Screaming Frog. It's a worthwhile investment. If you're going to pay for one tool, that's the one to pay for, especially if you're a developer. But that should get you in the right direction.
Yeah, I know we strive to do best practices for SEO, but there are a lot of people involved too.
That's the challenge. And so someone has to be ultimately responsible for the launch. Sometimes clients hire me to be that person, but any of you could do this with these checkboxes, because the checklists are not designed to necessarily be a developer, except to know what to check, and then you can tell the developer, hey, this is broken. I don't know what to do to fix it, but you better fix it. Right. But ideally, what I do is I would like to, I ask my clients before we launch a website to get access to the dev server a week before launch. Do my own little review. Screaming Frog should be able to work on the dev server with the password. And then I can catch any problems before launch. And then literally the minute the launch happens is when everybody's reviewing the site. Checking for broken links, checking for content. Are there any weird things that we're not expecting? Any widgets broken? Did we forget to add the form right? Is analytics on every page of the site? Right? These are the things that everybody should be checking. Because in a way, you want to almost manually check every page. And that's where Screaming Frog can be really helpful, because it can crawl the whole site
Yeah, yeah.
and tell you, is the analytics code on every site? Great. But those guidelines should help you. But I mean, we all know SEO isn't one and done, right? So that means now someone has to watch the search console every week.
Yeah,
Watch
that's
Bing Bing Webmaster Tools every week. Set up the weekly Google Analytics report to make sure there's troubleshooting report, make sure there's no problems. Like those kinds of things. This is your opportunity to start on the right foot so that when it launches, there's gonna be errors. The best developers make mistakes. And so it'll be okay. We just not panic and get as prepared as possible.
that's,
Cool.
yep.
Great.